The story begins on a bitterly cold winter morning in Chicago, Illinois, where thick fog hung in the air and the cold seemed to seep straight into the bones. Inside a two-story, older-style American home, Anna Miller, a young Asian woman who had recently married and moved in with her husband's family, quietly woke up before dawn. The clock read only 5:30 a.m., and outside the temperature hovered just above freezing. Anna wrapped herself in a heavy robe, pulled the collar tight around her neck, and headed downstairs to the kitchen, starting another familiar yet exhausting day. Her husband's family followed an extremely rigid eating routine. Every meal revolved around peas. Mashed peas, pea soup, rice mixed with peas, baked pies filled with peas. To them, peas were healthy, comforting, and part of the family tradition. But to Anna, that green food slowly became a source of deep psychological stress. As she stepped into the kitchen, Anna opened the refrigerator and freezer. Her eyes met rows upon rows of frozen pea bags, packed tightly into every compartment. On the kitchen shelves sat spice containers used exclusively for pea-based dishes. She let out a quiet sigh, soft but heavy with fatigue. "Peas again," she muttered in a voice that barely carried any emotion. Since marrying into the family, Anna hadn't had a single meal that truly matched her own tastes. Her first task every morning was to thaw, rinse, and prepare the peas. Cold water streamed from the faucet, numbing her fingers almost instantly. The peas were slick and icy, sending shivers through her body. Winters in Chicago were already harsh, and the constant exposure to cold water early in the morning often left Anna dizzy and aching. Still, she never complained. In this house, everyone simply assumed that Anna is good at cooking and that she's young, she can handle it. As she peeled and washed the peas, Anna's mind drifted back to her earlier days in California, where she had grown up with her parents. Back then, breakfast might be buttered toast, sunny-side-up eggs, a fresh salad, or simply a warm glass of milk. She missed the sunlit kitchen and the simple comfort of eating what she liked without being forced. The contrast made her heart feel even heavier. She let out a bitter little smile. At this rate, I'll probably start dreaming about peas, she thought. And in fact, she already had. Lately, her dreams were filled with endless fields of peas, with voices all around her urging her to cook faster, to cook more. Those dreams left her waking up exhausted, even after a full night's sleep. After finishing the prep work, Anna began cooking. She had to make 3 different dishes, all using the same main ingredient. Her hands moved quickly, but her heart felt weighed down. She worked like a machine. The smell of peas filled the kitchen, drifted up the stairs, and seeped into every room. To the rest of the family, it was a familiar, comforting scent. To Anna, it made her stomach twist in discomfort. When the food was ready, the whole family gathered around the table, showering her with praise. "Anna, the peas taste even better today than yesterday," her father-in-law said. "You really have a gift for cooking," her mother-in-law added with a satisfied smile. Those compliments should have made her happy, but instead they left Anna feeling hollow. No one asked whether she liked the food. No one noticed that the person who cooked it could barely bring herself to eat it. When it was her turn to sit down, Anna forced herself to take a few bites. But as soon as she lifted the spoon to her mouth, nausea rose in her throat. The long-accumulated disgust triggered a physical reaction. In the end, she ate only a little, then excused herself to clean up. At the sink, cold water once again numbed her hands. She stood there, staring at the running stream, overwhelmed by a sense of loneliness and isolation, right there in the very house she lived in. Anna's life as a daughter-in-law, far from her roots, had begun with hope and determination. Now it was slowly turning into a repetitive cycle, revolving around a cold kitchen and lifeless green peas. Peas were no longer just food. They had become a symbol of obligation, lack of understanding, and the quiet sacrifices of a young woman. And from this seemingly small obsession, deeper family tensions began to root, silently but steadily. If the first days of married life in Chicago had left Anna merely exhausted by the harsh weather and unfamiliar routine, over time, that exhaustion slowly turned into a deeper psychological struggle. The conflict didn't erupt in loud arguments. Instead, it simmered quietly and persistently, like winter cold slowly seeping into the bones. In her husband's family, anything related to cooking was almost automatically considered Anna's responsibility. Her mother-in-law, Margaret Miller, firmly believed that a young daughter-in-law should work hard, learn household duties, and grow into a proper wife. Every morning, while Anna stood at the sink washing peas in icy water, Margaret would already be sitting in the living room with a cup of hot tea. From time to time, she glanced at the clock and called out, "Anna, try to hurry up a bit. Everyone will be down for breakfast soon." The unfairness became even more obvious when compared to Sarah Miller, Anna's sister-in-law. Sarah had married into the family earlier, knew the household well, and was very skilled at avoiding chores. She often claimed she had a headache, felt tired, or had online work to take care of so she wouldn't have to step into the kitchen. When Anna first arrived, Sarah was friendly and eager to give advice, but little by little she withdrew from kitchen duties, leaving all the responsibility to her younger sister-in-law. Anna noticed this, but she chose to stay silent. She told herself she was new, that if she just endured a little longer, things would get better. But prolonged patience only made her feel heavier inside. Some days she finished cooking lunch and barely had time to rest before starting preparations for dinner. Meanwhile, Sarah lay on the couch watching entertainment shows, laughing freely as if the kitchen had nothing to do with her at all. That constant pressure began to change Anna's personality. She grew irritable, overly sensitive to remarks that seemed harmless on the surface. Even a simple comment like, "You're done early today," from her husband, Daniel Miller, was enough to set her off. Daniel didn't understand why his wife had changed. In his eyes, Anna was still doing the same daily tasks, still being praised by everyone. He couldn't see the exhaustion hidden behind those compliments. Meals, meant to be moments of family togetherness, became the loneliest times for Anna. Everyone chatted cheerfully about work, the weather, or weekend plans, while she quietly picked at her food, avoiding the plate of peas in front of her. She no longer tasted anything, only a vague sense of disgust slowly rising in her throat. Many times she skipped meals, claiming she didn't feel well, but no one truly cared to ask why. The tension finally reached its breaking point during a family outing meant to get a change of scenery. Anna had felt hopeful, almost excited, thinking that she might finally get to eat something different. But when they arrived at the family's usual restaurant, Daniel and his parents ordered the same familiar dishes as always, every single one centered around peas. In that moment, Anna felt her small spark of hope collapse completely. She said nothing. She lowered her head and slowly stirred the soup with her spoon. One question echoed over and over in her mind. Do I even exist in this family, or am I just the person who cooks? The frustration tightened her throat. She didn't eat, only took a few sips of water, then asked to go home early. On the drive back, she stared out the car window at brightly lit restaurants where people laughed, talked, and ate freely, and she felt like an outsider in her own life. That evening, Anna and Daniel had their first real argument. Anna broke down in tears, saying she was exhausted, that she could no longer endure living every day according to other people's habits. Daniel was at a loss, unsure how to respond. He loved his wife, but he had never imagined that things as seemingly small as food and kitchen duties could hurt her so deeply. Anna's family conflict wasn't a loud confrontation. It was a quiet battle between constant sacrifice and quiet indifference. When someone gives endlessly without being heard, they slowly lose themselves. And in that house, during a long Midwestern winter, Anna's silence became a warning sign of major changes yet to come. Anna's decision to leave the house in Chicago was not made on impulse. It was the result of months of emotional buildup when she realized that if she continued to stay silent, she would gradually lose herself. The trip wasn't an escape, it was a pause, a chance to step away from the role of the default cook, to breathe and reflect. She traveled with Daniel to Colorado, where he had a short business trip combined with a brief vacation. For Anna, it was the first time since getting married that she woke up without hearing reminders about breakfast, without rushing to thaw peas or standing for hours in a cold kitchen. In Colorado, mornings were filled with sunlight reflecting off the snow. Anna drank hot coffee, ate toasted bread, and rediscovered what it felt like to be a normal person, not a tool meant to serve. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, the absence Anna left behind quickly became impossible to ignore. On the very first morning, Margaret Miller walked into the kitchen out of habit, then stopped short. The room was silent. No smell of food, no clatter of pots and pans. She glanced at the clock, then called out, "Anna?" Only silence answered. When she realized her daughter-in-law wasn't home, Margaret frowned slightly, irritation mixed with confusion. Breakfast was delayed that morning, and for the first time in many years, Margaret found herself having to prepare the meal with her own hands. The person most directly affected was Sarah Miller, Anna's sister-in-law. With all eyes now on her, Sarah had no choice but to step into the kitchen herself. She rummaged through the refrigerator and came face to face with the frozen bags of peas she had previously only glanced at in passing. When the cold water touched her hands, she flinched and pulled back instinctively. The same cold that Anna had endured every morning now shot straight through Sarah's body, making her frown in discomfort. What had once seemed like simple work quickly proved exhausting. Sarah wasn't used to standing for long periods, wasn't used to watching the stove, adjusting seasoning, or cooking 3 meals a day. The first dish she made was bland, the second was overly salty, the peas were overcooked and flavorless. When the family sat down to eat, no one offered a compliment. Anna's father-in-law frowned, Daniel ate quietly just to finish, and Margaret Miller set her spoon down with a sigh. "Anna used to make these dishes much better," Margaret said without thinking, then fell silent, as if something had suddenly dawned on her. In the days that followed, things didn't improve. Sarah grew increasingly tired and irritable. She began complaining about how cold it was, how peeling keys hurt her hands, how she couldn't understand how Anna had managed to endure this for so long. But these complaints were no longer Anna's burden alone. They had become the shared reality of the entire household. The atmosphere in the house gradually grew heavy. Meals felt incomplete, not because there wasn't enough food, but because they lacked the care, patience, and quiet dedication Anna had once provided without a word. During short phone calls with his wife, Daniel began to notice the strain in his mother's voice, the unconscious admissions that the house just isn't the same anymore. One evening, when Sarah accidentally burned a pot of peas and the smell of smoke filled the kitchen, Margaret couldn't hide her frustration. But then she suddenly stopped. In that moment, she remembered Anna standing silently at the stove, tired yet still trying to make everything just right. For the first time, Margaret wondered whether she had been too indifferent. Sarah, too, began to feel uneasy. She realized that when Anna was still at home, everything had run so smoothly that she had taken it for granted. Now that she was the one carrying the load, she finally understood that it hadn't been a simple duty, but a continuous, invisible form of labor, unnamed and unacknowledged. In Colorado, Anna didn't know all the details of what was happening back home, but she sensed the change through Daniel's words. She didn't feel pleased or vindicated. Instead, there was a quiet calm mixed with relief. She understood that a person's true value is often only recognized when they are no longer there to keep sacrificing themselves. That trip was more than just a vacation. It became a mirror, one that forced the family back in Chicago to face a difficult truth. They had relied on Anna's quiet sacrifices for far too long, and when that quiet presence disappeared, the emptiness it left behind was far greater than they had ever imagined. By the time Anna Miller returned home after the trip with her husband, the atmosphere in the house had noticeably changed. The kitchen was no longer filled with its usual rush, and the unconscious reminders from the living room were gone. Everything seemed slower, more subdued, as if the entire family was waiting for something that finally needed to be said. That very evening, Margaret Miller took the initiative to ask Anna to sit down at the dining table with her. For the first time since Anna had married into the family, Margaret didn't bring up dinner or the menu. She looked at her daughter-in-law, her expression no longer one of assumption, but of reflection and hesitation. Margaret spoke. Her voice was slow, heavy with thought. "Anna, while you were gone, I did a lot of thinking. I realized that for a long time, I let you handle everything without ever asking whether you were tired or whether you even liked doing it." Anna froze. She didn't respond right away. It was the first time she had ever felt truly acknowledged. Margaret continued, more directly this time. "I'm sorry. I took your endurance for granted." The apology wasn't long or elaborate, but to Anna, it meant more than words could express. The quiet hurts she had carried for so long suddenly felt lighter. Daniel, sitting beside her, gently took Anna's hand. He apologized as well, for not recognizing the pressure she had been under. He admitted that he had grown used to everything running smoothly and forgotten that this smoothness was built on one person's constant sacrifice. The next day, Margaret called a small family meeting. The atmosphere was awkward at first, but everyone listened. She made a clear decision. Household duties, especially cooking, would be shared equally. No one would be the default person stuck in the kitchen all day anymore. Responsibilities would rotate, and meals would change to respect everyone's preferences. The decision left Sarah Miller, Anna's sister-in-law, visibly unsettled. She understood that she had avoided responsibility and allowed Anna to carry the heaviest burden. When she saw that Anna still willingly helped in the kitchen, even without being forced, Sarah felt genuine shame. One evening, when the two of them were alone in the kitchen, Sarah finally apologized. She admitted that she had been selfish, that she had taken advantage of Anna's kindness so she could have it easier herself. Anna listened quietly and offered a gentle smile. She said she wasn't looking for sympathy, only fairness and respect. Her words stayed with Sarah for a long time. From that point on, Sarah truly began to change. She no longer did things carelessly or deliberately cooked poorly the way she once had. She started learning to cook seriously, slowly and awkwardly at times, but with genuine effort. Another important change came in the family's meals. Peas were no longer the center of every dish. Margaret began asking Anna, "What would you like to eat today?" It was a simple question, but one that had never existed before. The table soon filled with variety: salads, pasta, creamy soups, grilled fish, and occasionally Asian dishes that Anna cooked according to her own tastes. Meals became more than just eating, they became moments of conversation and sharing. As the kitchen changed, so did the relationships. Anna no longer felt like an outsider. She was heard. She was given choices. She was allowed to say no when she was tired. Meals were no longer an obligation, but a time of real connection. Most importantly, Anna also learned to speak up for herself. She no longer suffered in silence. When she felt overwhelmed, she said so clearly. When she didn't like a certain dish, she spoke honestly, and this time her family knew how to listen. The story closes with the image of the whole family gathered together on a winter evening. Outside, the cold remained, but inside the kitchen, warm light glowed and a variety of food aromas filled the air. Anna stood in the kitchen, no longer alone. Sarah was beside her, while Margaret set the table nearby. No one was forced, no one was overlooked.
This new sense of fairness didn't come from simply switching roles, but from understanding, respect, and shared responsibility. And through this change, the Miller family learned an important truth. Love isn't found in one person sacrificing everything. It's found when everyone carries the load together, so no one has to endure in silence anymore.